Let's give a quick demo for TensorBoard.dev. First thing I want to point out is that TensorBoard.dev was added to TensorBoard, the open source project, in version 2.0.1. So you're going to want to make sure you have a pretty recent version. I'm running nightly here. So you should be able to see that my version is 2.3.0, and a little bit after that, you can see it was built May 10th. Another thing you're going to notice is that whenever I run a TensorBoard command, I'm getting these GPU errors, and that's because I'm terrified of updating the GPU on my machine during quarantine and not being able to use it for the rest of the year. So we're going to have to just ignore these. They have nothing to do with TensorBoard. Make sure that you have, if you want to use TensorBoard.dev, a pretty recent version. All right, so TensorBoard.dev, it uploads log directories. And just like the same TensorBoard you're very familiar with, I have some log directories in my home directory. You should be able to see them here. I have a bunch of them for different types of demos. We're going to be looking at the scalars demo, and then later I'll show the histograms demo. Inside these log directories, you'll see that they just contain event files in the standard TensorFlow output format. And inside those, you'll find normal types of artifacts like time series and graphs and stuff. Okay, so TensorBoard, what does it do? Easiest way to find out is to ask the help. And there's a lot of it, so we're going to pipe through less. Normally when people run TensorBoard, they run the serve command. So that starts a little server, a little HTTP server that slips up your log directory and presents it in a nice web view. We're going to be instead using this, and by the way, serve is default, so usually you don't write serve. But we're going to be replacing serve with dev. And what dev's going to do is it's going to upload our data to TensorBoard.dev. And yeah, let's just get started with it. So TensorBoard dev upload, need to specify a log directory. And of course, all of these things you can find out with your the help command. Right? So it's going to tell you need a log directory. And these are some optional things that I'll show you how those work in a minute. TensorBoard dev upload logdir, and then let's just use that same one, TensorBoard logdir, and we'll do the scalars demo. And you can see that rather than starting a server, it's popped out a URL for me to go to. And so I can just copy this URL, and if everything went well, I can navigate to that. And you'll see the TensorBoard that we just uploaded. So this will be just like the TensorBoard that you would get if you ran it locally. Has all of our normal favorite features and so on. So this is going to continuously upload while the directory is there. So just in case your experiment's still running and you're still downloading your logs to it, it will continue to update it. And when you're done, Control-C to end it. It hopefully prints out your URL again. Great, and that's really the meat of it. But there's more you can do. So you might be interested in what experiments you have uploaded. I deleted all of my experiments this morning just to make this list very short. And you can see that this list shows just this one experiment. This is the ID of the experiment that I just uploaded. You can see it in the URL, so 70H, and that should be here. 70H is the ID of the experiment. You can see that it doesn't have a name or description, and that makes it kind of hard to know what's going on there. You also see that it has uploaded 37,000 scalars and 53,000 bytes of binary object. The binary object is the graph that was associated with this particular log directory. And this has all of the normal features of the graph viewer. So yeah, let's give that experiment a name. Again, you might wonder, how do you do that? So go to help. And if you go to help, you'll find out that there's this command, update metadata. And right now, all it does is update the name, description, or any other metadata associated with the experiment. So let's give that a try. And you see that you just have to provide a name and description. So let's just do that. And the experiment ID, of course, one you want to change. So the experiment ID was, and just to make this a little bit easier on ourselves, let's just copy the experiment ID and we'll put it in a variable here. State metadata, experiment ID equals ID, and we'll give it a name. Copy this from my cheat sheet. You can set that name, and you can refresh here, and you can see that you set the name on this. And you can send this to other people. If you just copy that URL. If you had a incognito browser window, you can send that to someone. You can also set descriptions. Here, the quote here. Yeah, so you just set that to like maybe a little description of what's going on there. If this were long, you'd be able to collapse and expand this so you can include a whole bunch of text here about what's going on in this experiment. And URLs are carried into their format, so you can click through those URLs. So the next thing you might be interested in is how to delete an experiment. So maybe you uploaded this but didn't mean to upload this yet. So for that, you would just use the delete command. So we should be able to keep the experiment ID in there. And before we delete it, why don't we take another look at the list just to show how the list shows our name and descriptions now. Oops, I deleted dev. Yeah, so here's my list of experiments, of which there's exactly one, and there's a name and a description. But maybe I don't want this anymore. Maybe I've shared too much. Dev delete experiment ID equals this. Copy, paste. And it tells me that I deleted the experiment. If I had put something wrong in there, it would tell me that the experiment, I don't have access to it, or actually this isn't even a valid experiment ID, so that's a helpful warning. Now if I navigate back to my TensorBoard, I should be able to refresh it and see that it doesn't exist anymore. And it tells me that this experiment ID has no scalar data or graph data. So deletion successful. So one more thing. So the graphs I showed you so far only have scalars and graph data, but we're continuously adding our highest priority plugins. And so the next one that's available is going to be histograms. It so happens that I have a directory with some histograms in it. Or logged there. It's called histograms demo. We can see that it just has a simple events file. And when you're using an experimental plugin, we're going to do the same dev upload log there and pass this here. But you have to specify that you want to the histograms. And it'll tell you that this plugin is currently experimental, and when you upload it, it's public. And then it gives you a URL back. And notice that the URL now also includes this URL parameter, experimental plugins as histograms. That way, it will know to show you that experimental data. And there weren't any scalars or graphs. There's only histograms now. All right, that's it for the demo. Let's switch back to the presentation and talk about how all of this works and what's the roadmap for the project.